Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about how to choose the perfect indoor bonsai species for you. So what we're going to talk about is different factors that come into play when we think about getting a bonsai and how those factors can affect which bonsai fits best to you with regards to taking care of it, really maintaining the health of the tree, but also simply a tree that will give you joy in the end because it lets you work on it the way you want to work on it. Later on in this video, we'll also talk about specific species and how they are related to those factors. So you can definitely then see the way you normally would take care of a bonsai tree, which species fits best to that way. So also stay tuned for that, of course. So I would start right away with getting into the most important factors. And the first one that I want to talk about, as is often the case, is watering. Watering is fundamental for your tree's health, so it's definitely something you have to keep in mind also when choosing a specific variety that you want to get. What do I mean with watering? It's basically the question, how often should you water and how intensely should you water? And of course, there's differences between species. I would say there's two different sorts of people when it comes to watering. The ones that are very diligent about watering, that really are always on top of their game, and other ones, including myself, that maybe neglect the watering sometimes from time to time on trees where it simply happens that for 1 or 2 days when you should have already watered, they didn't water yet. And some trees are more forgiving on that, some trees are not as forgiving. I will later on in this video also then talk about specific species and how you can best adapt your way of taking care of a bonsai to those species. When we look a bit closer into the watering topic, I would say it's definitely important to realize overwatering is probably happening for many people more commonly than underwatering. But if you're a person that underwaters a tree, that of course means you would go for different species than somebody who tends to overwater trees. Apart from watering, of course, another big factor is the condition you can keep your tree in. So basically the environment you can create in your home for your indoor bonsai, which is of course also an important factor when deciding on which species you should get. So what do I mean with the environment? A big factor in this, of course, is the lighting situation. Do you have a lot of natural light in your flat or in your home? Do you have the possibility to also keep part of your indoor trees outside for example, for summer on a small garden, a terrace, or a balcony? And also, do you have the possibility to also work with artificial light, for example? And another big thing, especially in winter, is it's quite drafty in the areas where you would be able to keep trees. All of these factors you have to keep in mind when then later on deciding on a tree, I would say. Again, later on in the video, we'll talk a bit about more specific trees and which ones would fit, for example, on a balcony, on a place that is maybe a bit more drafty. So we will come to that. But before that, another thing, of course, is also how vigorous a tree is or a species is. Because I know people that want to work basically constantly on the trees, and there are trees that allow to work more constantly at least on, and there are other trees that are rather slow growth, so it will take time and patience. So if you're an impatient person, maybe those trees would fit better. If you're a bit impatient, then maybe again opt for other trees. So three big factors, I would say: water, the environment you can keep your tree in, and basically what you expect from your tree. They all play a factor into how difficult it will be for you to keep a tree or how easy it will be for you to keep a certain species. So what are common species and where would we place them within those factors? I have three different species here. Two of them I would say are quite similar, and for the way I'm normally taking care of my bonsai trees, they are the more easier ones, namely the jade tree and also this little ficus here. Both trees that are a bit more forgiving in general, I would say. When I mean forgiving, in my case, it means I can forget to water them maybe once in a while and they won't die back right away. Because as I said, I'm rather a person that might forget to water than to always be very diligent about watering, maybe even watering a bit too much. And of course, if you're rather an underwaterer, something like a jade fits perfectly for you. They can go long periods of times without actually being watered, so it's definitely an easier species than for you. That is how, with regards to watering, you normally tend to care for your trees. Also, ficus in general is a bit more forgiving, so it doesn't, of course, completely like to dry out. It doesn't like to sit in water for too long. But if it does, normally, and you realize early enough, it will bounce back. So also again, in my opinion, an easier tree. Also, when it comes to the conditions, as long as you have enough light in your house, and for me, actually, a west-facing window is enough direct um, natural light for it to grow quite healthily, then again, both species are definitely quite easy. That's why I would also lump them together, because I feel like the way you can take care of them quite similar. When it comes to the last factor, so how quickly they are growing and how much you can work on them, I would definitely opt rather for the ficus. In my opinion, they are very fast growers. They are quite forgiving also with when it comes to really doing a lot of work on it, pruning a lot, also root pruning, repotting, normally very forgiving. So if you really want to get your hands dirty and just gain experience in working on trees, a ficus is always a good tree to start that. But also the jade plant. However, it is a bit of a slow grower in comparison to the ficus. Still growing, I would say, moderately well, especially in summer, but don't expect as much growth as you would expect from a ficus variety. Then I would move on to more, in my experience, at least finicky trees. One of them I have here, which is the Chinese privet that you can see all the way here. Um, it is definitely, for me, again, when it comes to those factors, a bit more difficult because, especially when it comes to watering, I feel like once the season changes, it's a bit more difficult to get the hang of it, I would say. So when winter came around, I definitely struggled at first to take care of that tree. I also had it in a quite drafty window, and that one really reacted quite dramatically to that. So it dropped almost all of its leaves. I really thought basically it was a goner, but then I just kept watering it little by little because it had no leaves. But in spring, I then actually saw that new growth started, and now it is in a more stable environment again and also in a more stable condition. However, I must say for somebody like me, where watering is maybe a bit not as diligent, I would say, as for other people, and also that due to space, sometimes keep my trees in rather drafty places, then it might be more difficult to keep this tree in a healthy condition. If that's not something you will struggle with, then of course it's not a problem. So then definitely go for a tree like this. I would also put another tree very much in the same area as this Chinese privet, and that's actually the Chinese pepper tree. Also, in my experience, normally a quite cheerful and nice tree. However, also in winter, be careful to not have it in drafty places. When it is unhappy in any way, it will also react by shedding a lot of its leaves. But again, of course, once you have a specific species, the best thing you can do is read up on it, especially when the reaction the tree gives you is something unexpected that you cannot really put your finger on why it is doing that. Always read up on it, and normally you will find very species specific then topics on your tree and how to best care for it. One more tree I actually would say is, in my opinion, the one, at least in my collection, that is the most finicky is brush cherry. Those one, again, it always comes down to watering for me, basically. I think the light condition I have figured out with this one, but also watering, I let it dry out once a bit too much, and it basically died back half of the tree. So I'm still struggling to find the groove with that one. It still has some healthy growth on it, but most of it has actually died back. So definitely a tree I struggle with mostly, and it's also the tree that is the most or the furthest away from how I would care for my trees from all the other trees, basically. That tree is actually the one that made me realize that it's really about the specific species and how different they can be. Another thing that I want to mention, because we talked about also the factor conditions and environment you can keep it in, I do have a balcony, and for example, for me, Mediterranean species work perfectly well on my balcony. So I have a pomegranate tree there, a rosemary, as well as an olive tree, and all three of them are actually thriving on my balcony. I would still consider them indoor bonsai, but I personally do keep them on my balcony all year round because it is quite protected in winter from the cold there, so I have it close to the wall, so it normally never goes below freezing, I would say, in that specific area on my balcony. So I do keep them also outside in winter, and they definitely are thriving. So my pomegranate sheds all the leaves in winter, as it does when you have it in a cold environment, but it really comes back greatly in spring again. A great growth always in summer, as well as my olive and my rosemary. So if you have the possibility also to keep some of your trees outside, most of them actually will benefit from it. Of course, other trees like the ficus, for example, you wouldn't be able to keep outside in winter if you live in temperate climates, because anything below or even close to freezing actually would kill a ficus, even more so a jade plant. But if you have Mediterranean trees and those are trees that interested you, if you have a balcony, definitely give it a go, keep them outside, and you will see they will grow way stronger and healthier than if you would keep them inside all year round. So a lot of different species, but once again, I want to mention, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, it really comes down to the factors. You look at those 3 to 4 factors and how your tree falls into them with regards to the requirements on watering, on lighting, or in general the conditions you keep them in. And also if you want to work a lot on your tree, or if you rather have it patiently grow and then work ever so often on the tree whenever it is needed. That of course are all factors you need to combine together and see which then species fits best for you. So I hope this video was informative for you. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like. And if you enjoy this channel, of course, feel free to subscribe to it. Hopefully I will see you in the next video then. Until then, goodbye.